How do we let go of these fears on the inside? Because when we let go of the fear, now what happens is we aren't going to constantly look at ourselves as not being enough. The reason why we look at ourselves that way is because the emotion of fear that is inside the body is connected to stories of fear that is in our mind, and they circulate together. So whenever we feel fear, we look at our outside world with fear, and we look at ourself or our situations, the events, through the lens of fear, and we find a way to see it in a fearful scenario or see it as a fearful scenario. But in reality, this scenario can be fearful, or it doesn't have to be, or it can be just fine. When something happens, we can look at it and be upset about it, or we can be grateful about it. There's always a perspective that we can see it as, right? Any situation. You can see it as I failed, or you can see it as I grew and learned. When you lose everything, you can see it as life is over, it's really bad, or you can see it as an opportunity to start over and build something even better. They are both the same thing. But one perspective has a lot of fear in it, and the other perspective doesn't. What determines the perspective that we see things in is based on the amount of fear emotions that we have in the body and the pattern that we have in our mind. So then when we do practice every morning and every evening, your goal is to do two things. On the level of the body, teach the body how to relax, how to let go of tension. That's why we tap, and that's why we breathe, and that's why we stretch. That's why we exert ourselves through strength training, because all of this starts to release a lot of the tension and starts to move that fear that's on the inside. Your fear is not going to get moved by listening to what it is that I'm saying. It will help you think different, but your body will not automatically feel different. It can happen, but it's very difficult. So we need to go ahead and approach it on both the mind and the body. So on the level of the body, you do your practice every morning, every evening, and you start to feel better. The fear starts to leave your body. You start to become more loose, you start to become more relaxed. The act of doing the practice slows down your mind. It allows you to become more present. When this happens, you will realize that the fear that you had was just stories. They're just a narrative. It's just a narrative about what's happening. Remember that life is always happening to us, or happening for us. We can say it in different ways. Life is just happening, and it's always happening. But as it happens, we can go ahead and make a story about it and say, this is what I like about it, this is what I don't. Here's what it means when this is happening. And those stories define how we see it. But that story is just in our head. It's something that we make up in our mind. And we don't need to constantly make up a story about everything.